Well, Judges chapter 7 today is what we're going to talk about, and there is such a cool story we get to get into. This story is one of the few stories that I do remember from my childhood going through primary. And I'm not sure exactly why this story impressed me so much, but I love what the message is of it. And I remember hearing about this, but I rarely ever found this story as I grew up because it's hidden inside the Old Testament in some of the areas where not a lot of people want to do a lot of reading. So let's talk about this story about Gideon and his armies. Remember, in the last chapter, Gideon fought off the chariot riders of Canaan. The Canaanites had their chariots. God miraculously helped Gideon overcome them with a great storm that caused them to cause a whole bunch of mud in the valley, and so the chariots got stuck. The people had to abandon their chariots and flee in front of the Israelites as they performed. So now Gideon is going against the Midianites. Okay, now these are the groups of people that Israel did not get rid of back when Joshua brought them into the land of the promised land. So they have to get rid of these people still. They've got to get these taken care of. And so Gideon's heading out to go after the Midianites next to finish what God has asked them to do. Now, this time, though, okay, the size of his army is different. If you remember the first time, he got, I believe it was, let's see, who was it? Naphtali, and who was it? The other one that came with him. There was another one that came last time as well. Dang, it's like right there. But anyways, there was only one or two of the tribes of Israel that actually were willing to help Gideon. And now that Gideon's had a success, other tribes are going, oh, well, we want to be a part of this too. We want to be helpful in this. So the ability for him to have a larger army is so much greater in this. So let's get into chapter 7 and learn about this. Okay, now remember, Israel didn't take any of those chariots from the Canaanites. They didn't take the military technological advantage that they could have gotten. If they had gone back and picked out all those chariots from the mud, got them all out of there, cleaned them up, they would have chariots. They would have a technological advantage in war. But God told them long ago, you do not take these technological advances with you. Now, why is that? It is because God wants them to rely on him. He wants them to know if you're going to be successful at this, it is only because you are working with me, not because of your own strength, your own wisdom, or anything like that. There's nothing, I'm not going to give you a reason to give pride in yourself and not pride in me, or faith in yourself and not faith in me. So this same trend is an important thing because he's trying to build the faith of Israel. And as we know, whenever whatever leader Israel is using passes away, Israel tends to go bad. They lack faith in themselves and in reaching God. They have faith in a leader, somebody outside them, to help them get to God. But they lack faith themselves. They want somebody else to do it for them, basically, to be that intermediary between them and God. Excuse me. And really, faith is between you and God. And that's the more important thing that we should be building. And they severely resisted that concept all the time. So we go to that, the Judges, book of Judges, we go through this pride cycle constantly because of that. So chapter 7, Gideon's armies reduced to 300. They frighten the Midianite armies with trumpets and lights. Love this story. The Midianites fight among themselves, flee, and are defeated by Israel. So great. I love this story. We're going to talk about some really fun things today. Okay. So let's get in and talk about this. Verse 1, then Jerubbaal, who is Gideon, remember Jerubbaal is the nickname that his dad gave Gideon. So remember, Gideon was commanded to destroy the groves, to get rid of the altars to Ashtaroth and to Baal, get rid of them. The people in the city were really mad that he had destroyed their ability to do rituals. And so they demanded him, hey, we want justice. You send him out. We're going to impose justice on him for violating our religious liberties. And so his dad said, well, I'll tell you what, if Baal really is a god and he is powerful like you guys claim, then why does he need you to deal with this? Why can't he deal with it himself? So let Baal be offended himself and deal with my son on his own. That's where we got that name Jerubbaal. And we'll hear that periodically as we continue on the story of Gideon. So, and all the people that were with him rose up early and pitched beside the well of Harod, so that the host of the Midianites were on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. So just they're trying to get a little bit of an idea of where they're at, a little bit of explanation in there as where they are. So he's got this army with him. He's pulled all these people together, and there's a lot more willing to fight with him now than there was before. So he's got a big army that he is working with, basically. In verse 2, and the Lord said unto Gideon, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hand hath saved me. So again, the Lord's pointing out this principle that he wants people to have faith in him, not faith in their own abilities. So he's trying to help them with this. So in Introduction to the Old Testament by Rasmussen, he had this comment to say about this. He says, though only the tribes from the north, meaning half of Manasseh and Asher and Zebulun and Naphtali, joined his campaign, these were more than enough for the purposes of the Lord at the time. That's right. Naphtali was the one that actually did go fight the Canaanites. Nobody else would be willing to fight. And now they all want to help him because now they didn't get a chance to enjoy the pride and glory of the last fight. So he says, these were more than enough for the purposes of the Lord at the time. Eventually, the 32,000. So he started with 32,000 soldiers. It was reduced to 300, that the help of the Lord might be apparent to Israel. Against the formidable might of camel-mounted marauders, strategy and the help of the Lord gave the Israelites success where hand-to-hand combat would have been disastrous. Excuse me. It is not now known that the use of camels for military purposes by the nomadic desert riders was only beginning to be common in those times, around the 12th and 10th centuries BC. And of course, the first tribes to use them had the advantage. So the Midianites have figured out how to use camels. Like horseback, they're up higher, they can march through people, they can escape faster, they can run up closer to people faster. It gives them a military advantage. If you're running around with a sword and some guy comes at you from a camel, he's above you. You're gonna have to reach way up to try to get him, whereas he is above you. It's easier for him to just reach down and get you. So they have a military advantage. Now, 32,000 troops is a pretty good sized troop for Israel, but the Lord says it's too many. It's not going to work out. This is going to be a bloody, nasty battle. So we need to change this. I want to make sure that the 32,000 is more than enough to win this fight. It's going to be a bloody one. A lot of them will lose their life, but they'll win. However, God says we need to make this work out to where you build your faith in me. And so he's going to cut the number of people in Gideon's army down. So verse 3, he says, now therefore go to, proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whosoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart early from Mount Gilead. And there returned of the people 22,000, and there remained 10,000. So if you remember back in, I believe it's the book of Leviticus, when we're talking about the law of Moses, one of the rules in the law of Moses was, of course, when going to battle, if you have people who are afraid or fearful, they should not go to battle. Part of that, I think, is because they're not going to be effective soldiers. And the other part is their fear could cause more widespread panic in the army. And you don't want that. So the rule was, if you're basically have severe anxiety about doing this, you can go home. So 22,000 went home. How many of those are from one? They don't tell us exactly which tribe they were from, but I would dare say probably that half of Manasseh and Asher in there as well. It's probably most of them. Naphtali's been through this once before with Gideon. They probably felt pretty confident going with him as well this time. But they dropped down. Almost 2/3 of the army left, basically. It went from 32 to 10,000, basically. So that's a huge drop in number. 10,000 is going to be a really hard fight for the Israelites to do against the Midianites. But that's where we're at. So let's jump in after those have left. And he's now down to 10,000. Let's go read in verse 4 what the Lord said about these 10,000. And the Lord said unto Gideon, the people are yet too many. Bring them down unto the water, and I will try them for thee there. And it shall be that of whom I say unto thee, this shall go with thee, the same shall go with thee. And of whomsoever I say unto thee, this shall not go with thee, the same shall not go. So he's telling them, take them all down to, take the 10,000 down to this pond, basically down to the water, and they're going to get, and tell them, get a drink of water. And some people are going to do it one way, and some people are going to do it the other way. And which way I tell you is the right one, you keep them and dispense everybody else to go home, basically. So verse 5, so he brought down the people unto the water, and the Lord said unto Gideon, every one that lappeth of the water with his tongue as a dog lappeth, him shalt thou set by himself. Likewise, every one that boweth down upon his knees to drink. And then, so this is basically, if you're thirsty, you just reach down and put your face up to the water and start slurping the water and drinking that way, basically, is what he's talking about here. And verse 6, and the number of them that lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. So this is, but all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink water. So most of the people out of that 10,000 put their faces down by the water to suck it up. The other ones, what they did was they scooped the water with their hand and brought it up to their hand to drink. 300 people, the only ones that did that. So you have this small group of people who brought it up to their mouth to drink, and everybody else got down to drink. So verse 7, and the Lord said unto Gideon, by the 300 men that lapped will I save you, and deliver the Midianites into thine hand, and let all the other people go, every man unto his place. So he went from 32,000 to 300 people in this army. From a military standpoint of resources, there's no way 300 men on the ground, a ground force, is going to do anything against a force that is 1,000 strong, that is on camels. This is going to be a complete, there's no, if you look at it from a purely resource military standpoint, there's no way Israel will win this. Absolutely no way possible. It'd be a total miracle if they did, which is exactly what God wants, is have a miracle happen. To prove to the people God is with them and is helping them. Have faith in God, basically. So that's what they did. They let him go, and let's see, sorry, I just lost my place here. Verse 8. So the people took victuals in their hand, and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Israel, every man unto his tent, and retained those 300 men. And the host of Midian was beneath him in the valley. So they're up in this mountain area, and the Midianites are down in this valley just below him. So now he's down to 300 people. So this is, talk about a test of faith. If you remember, Gideon really struggled with his faith the first battle. In fact, he had the prophetess Deborah come with him to give him faith, to give him extra strength, to help him as he defeated the Canaanites the first time. And he saw the miracle of what helped him to defeat the Canaanites and how that worked out. And he saw the prophecies of Deborah come true. So now Gideon's feeling a little more confident in himself, probably. We don't hear much about him complaining in here, but I'm sure he's still a little worried about how in the world this is going to work out. 300 men against the Midianites is insane. There is absolutely no physical way this will ever work out. But this is where the beauty of God comes in, basically. Very, very important. So here's what's going to happen. Okay, verse 9. And it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, and remember, anytime the Lord said unto him, that's a revelation. They are still getting continuing revelation. The scriptures are an example of continuing revelation. Why would God ever stop that if he did it for thousands and thousands of years to help his people? Why would he ever stop revealing things to them? It makes no sense. Continuous revelation is the principle of God and will always be that principle. As long as people are willing to listen to him, he will always speak to them. So continuous revelation is important for all time. Okay, verse 9, sorry. Arise, this is what the Lord said unto Gideon. Arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it into thine hand. But if thou fear to go down, go thou with Phurah thy servant down to the host. So he's saying, Gideon, you need to go down to the enemy. You need to go down. I have delivered them in your hands. They're ready for you. They're ready to be taken over for you. And he says, but if thou fear to go down, go with Phurah thy servant. So there might be more to this story where Gideon's like, what are you talking? Me go down? I'm not going down. That's a big army down there. There's no way I'm going down there by myself. This is crazy. There could be some more dialogue in there, or it could be the Lord interpreting and understanding the thoughts of Gideon going, oh, I'm just afraid. There's no way. There's no way I would survive that. I can't. So he says, I'll tell you what, take your friend, your servant with you. He can go with you to go down. You need to go down to the enemy. Sneak down there. Verse 11, and thou shalt hear what they say, and afterward shall thine hands be strengthened to go down unto the host. Then he went down with Phurah his servant unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host. So Gideon and his servant Phurah, I hope I'm saying that right, sorry if I'm not, they snuck down basically to get up close to the camp of the Midianites. Now, the Midianites are getting ready for battle. They're preparing to deal with Israel on the battlefront. Probably the next day was when they were going to do the battle, or soon. And uh, this is interesting because, again, it seems like there's a gap in the story. Most likely, from what we know about Gideon, is he's scared. He's probably scared. I started with 32,000. It would have been a nasty, dragged out battle, but we could have survived and beat the Midianites with 32,000. We're down to 300. I have no idea how this is humanly possible to make this work out. There's probably a good chance that either Gideon, at least in his heart and his mind, is freaking out about how this is going to work out. What kind of miracle is God going to pull out to make this work? Because he probably even had more than 300 when he went against the Canaanites in the previous battle. So obviously, Gideon is having a crisis of faith here. He doesn't know how the outcome of this is going to turn out. And he's really worried because what he understands of the physical world, that kind of a natural progression of things, is telling him he is going to lose big time. But God is saying, don't worry about it. I got you. I got you. Got your back. You got it taken care of. So to help Gideon with his fears, he tells him, look, go down and listen to what the Midianites are talking about. Listen to what they say. They are ready to be taken over by you. You are going to win. So he sneaks down with his servant to understand what's going on. At least he's willing to follow God and say, okay, I'll go down there. I'll take my friend because I'm kind of afraid of this. I'll go down. So now, verse 12, this is it. And the Midianites and the Amalekites, so it's not just Midianites, actually, there's Amalekites in there as well. On all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, meaning this is a large army. They're spread out everywhere. If you've ever seen a field with lots of grasshoppers in it, they're all over the place. This is huge. And their camels were without number as the sand by the seaside for multitude. This is a very, very formidable army. Tons of troops, tons and tons and tons of troops, and an innumerable amount of camels as well for them. So this is huge. Now we know Israel had 32,000, and this is larger. This is a lot. They're not counting these numbers. So this is huge. Probably a really scary thing for Gideon to be down here dealing with this. So verse 13, and when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow. So he's overhearing. He's hiding in the bushes at night. It's the middle of the night. He's hiding in the bushes. And he hears this one guy going, man, I dreamed a dream. Let me tell you about this dream that I dreamed last night, man. And he said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian. So if it's tumbling, it's coming from a higher location down into the host of Midian. So this cake of barley bread, so bread made with barley wheat, basically a barley flour, it comes tumbling down into the camp. And it came unto a tent, and smote it that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay along. So as this barley bread comes down, it hits into a tent and basically just smashes the tent to pieces. The tent's gone. The tent is gone. So verse 14, and his fellow answered and said, this is nothing else save the sword of Gideon the son of Joash, the man of Israel. For into his hand hath God delivered Midian and all the host. So this guy is telling the story. Man, I had this weird dream. This thing of barley came down, piece of bread came down, just obliterated the tent. And his buddy's going, man, that is totally Gideon. He is going to destroy us. He is going to obliterate us. God has put us in his hand. He's going to win. Your dream is a prophecy of Gideon defeating us. We don't stand a chance against him. Now you got to realize Gideon's thinking the same thing. We don't stand a chance against these guys. But he's overhearing them realize that they're afraid of Gideon. They're afraid of what can happen. And they're worried. And these dream that this guy had is now making them even more worried. And there's probably more of this happening all over the camp. These kinds of dreams that are happening. And so these rumors are spreading, going, all these people are having dreams. You know, he's only overhearing the conversation of a couple people, but there's probably a lot more of these dreams and things happening and conversations happening through this innumerable host of the Midianites and Amalekites. So they're all afraid. God has basically inspired fear in them, and they're afraid now of what's going to happen if they come to fight Gideon. Gideon's going to win. And this is that mental battle that I always talk about. You know, if you can fight that, win that mental battle, half of what you need to win is done. That's almost really 80% of fighting is the mental battle. You have to mentally be willing to overcome. And if you do, you have a greater chance of winning. If you lose the mental battle, it doesn't matter the might and power you've got in front of you, you're not going to win. In fact, there's an interesting story about this that just came to mind from the Civil War, the Battle of Little Round Top. One of the groups, one of the regiments ran out of ammunition. Joshua Chamberlain's group that was up there on Round Top, they ran out of ammunition, and they were fighting with knives and just punching people, stabbing them, hitting with their guns, things like that. They had no ammunition. And one 12-year-old young man who was in that regiment, he's got a gun and he's aiming it at the Confederate soldiers. He's guarding a big group of Confederate soldiers with this gun, and they're all sitting there on the ground with their hands up, basically, and he's holding the gun. And as Joshua Chamberlain walks by, this young man says, "Sir, I got a problem." And Joshua says, "Well, what is it?" He says, "There's no ammunition in my gun. What do I do? I can't really guard these people." And he says, "Well, just don't tell them that." They all surrendered. They were afraid of him. And so they gave up mentally. And that helped Joshua Chamberlain and his unit to win when the odds were stacked against them. So Gideon gets this glimpse into what's going on in the enemy camp, basically, and they're afraid of him. That probably helped him so much to feel like, oh, God has put them in our hands. He has prepared them to lose. Man, this is amazing. So verse 15, and it was so, when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshiped. That he's probably praying, "Thank you, Lord. Thank you so much. Oh, yes, I am feeling so much more comfortable about this battle now." He returned to the host of Israel and said, "Arise, for the Lord hath delivered into your hand the host of Midian." So he rallies his men together and says, "We're going down to take care of him now. The God has delivered them into our hands." And I'm sure these 300 are going, "What are you talking about? What's going on? How in the world are we going to fight this army? This is crazy." So verse 16, and he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand, with empty pitchers and lamps within the pitchers. And he said unto them, Look on me and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that I do, as I do, so shall ye do. So he's teaching them into these, he divided them up, 300 men into three companies, so 100 men in each company. He says, you're going to take these torches, you're going to take this lamp and this pitcher, and you're going to do what I do. So verse 18, when I blow with the trumpet, I and all that are with me, then blow ye the trumpets also on every side of all the camp, and say, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So they're going to blow a trumpet. When Gideon blows his trumpet, everybody else in his company is going to blow their trumpet, and everybody else is going to blow their trumpets and yell, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So he's playing into that interpretation of that dream, basically. Verse 19, so Gideon and the 100 men that were with him came unto the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had but newly set the watch. So this is an important thing to understand. What is a watch? Okay. Now in military terms, you set guards around your camp that are there to protect the rest of the camp. That is important because you need to prevent ambushes and sneak attacks and short terrorist attacks, invasions into your camp, stealing, those kinds of things. And so some people, their job is to stay awake at night and to watch, to keep an eye out, to prevent people from coming in and sound the alarm so that the rest of the army can get up and come help. So that's an important thing, but the watch is also a timing thing that they did. They broke the day, they broke time up, not so much in a 24-hour period like we have today, but in different time periods. So this is from the Old Testament Study Guide. Ancient Israel divided the 12 hours of the night into 3 watches. The middle watch would have been from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. After the dispersion of Israel, the Jews continued this practice for a long time. In New Testament times, the Romans divided the night into 4 watches. See Matthew 24:43. So this concept of you're going to go for so many hours, then you guys will go for so many hours, then you'll go for so many hours is how they broke it up. So this is the middle watch. So between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., sometime in there, in the deep of night, is when this is happening. So they blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers that were in their hands. So they had a pitcher, okay? Not a picture like a picture frame, family portrait or something. A pitcher like something you carry water in. And they put a lamp inside of it. And then they had their trumpets. So they blew the trumpets and they smashed the pitcher, which means the candle and the light would come out of the pitcher, basically. So the pitcher was hiding the light of the candle. And then they revealed the light of the candles, basically the torches. Verse 20, and the 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and held the lamps in their left hands and the trumpets in their right hands to blow withal. And they cried, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp. I'm going to pause just right there for a second. So they almost surrounded the Midianites and Amalekites camp. They snuck out and they got them positioned around them, and they're blowing trumpets. So they're hearing all the. You got to look at this from the perspective of the Midianites and Amalekites and the other groups that were with them. All they hear, middle of the night, right in the middle of the night when most of the camp is asleep, trumpets blaring. They're like, "What? What's going on? What's happening?" Big announcement, and all of a sudden, all this light appears. So it's as if they're surrounded. They can see these candles that show wherever a candle is, there's enemy troops. And they're virtually surrounded. They just look in every direction, see these candles, these torches burning, basically. And they hear this big shout of the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And I'm sure this was just a deafening sound in there using that sword of the Lord and of Gideon, realizing, holy crap, Gideon's army has surrounded us at night. We're screwed. They've already lost the mental game, and now they're about to get into battle, and they're freaking out. They've caught him off guard. They've got him in a very confused, discombobulated state because they're all asleep, and now they're being woken up rudely to deal with this situation. So what did they do? Verse 21, and all the host ran and cried and fled. Total chaos, I'm sure, in the camp of the Midianites, Amalekites, and the other groups that were there. They're freaking out. They're trying to get out of there. They're totally afraid that they're all about to be destroyed. Completely afraid they're about to be destroyed. Verse 22, and the 300 blew the trumpets, and the Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. And the host fled to Beth Shittah in Zererath, and to the border of Abel Meholah unto Tabath. So this is interesting. The Lord set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. Now, what does that mean? What that really means basically is they fought each other. They started to kill and destroy each other. They were confused in the mess, and they just started to, oh my gosh, I got to be careful. I'm out for myself. I've got to be careful. I've got to flee, got to get out of here. And they basically killed each other. They wiped themselves out, not realizing they were. It's probably in the dark of night. They're panicking. They're just, in their mind, they're believing the armies of Gideon are raiding them. And so they're just fighting, and they just end up fighting each other, basically, not realizing they're killing the same team is fighting each other, basically. So that's what happened. And then as they're trying to flee, some of them get away, some didn't, of course. Verse 23, and the men of Israel gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, out of Asher, and out of Manasseh, and pursued after the Midianites. So those are probably the other 30 some odd thousand that got sent home. They heard the cry, they saw this, and now came to rush to help, basically. Now that the hard work was done, they want part of the glory and jump in here. So they jumped in to pursue the Midianites. Verse 24, and Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites and take before them the waters unto Beth Barah and Jordan. Then all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together and took the waters unto Beth Barah and Jordan. So now they get the tribe of Ephraim to come in from another direction to help out. Verse 25, and they took two princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb, and they slew Oreb upon the rock Oreb, and Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon on the other side Jordan. So they took these princes that were probably the leaders of the army, and they killed them, and then they brought the heads of them to Gideon to show that they had been defeated, basically. So what a crazy story. A great example, though, of understanding that God is really trying to teach the Israelites to have faith in him. And this is an important point because God is still trying to teach us this principle in our day and age as well. How can we have faith in him? And sometimes he's going to put us in situations that seem near impossible to work out because he's asking us to have faith. So think about this in your own life, okay? Maybe you've gotten asked to be in a calling that you just felt was way over your limit. You felt was just so much above and beyond what you could do, or you were just busy and now you had to do this calling. Sometimes you are called to a calling because God wants you to exercise your faith in him. He doesn't call you because you are prepared and ready to do some miraculous thing in that calling. He calls you to see if you will rely on him. Because if you're willing to rely on him, he will do a mighty work through you to bless the lives of the people that you are serving and helping through that calling. So just realize that next time the bishopric reaches out to you to give you a calling, accept it, especially if it's a challenge. If you feel like it's going to stretch you and push you and not be a good fit for you, accept it. There's a reason that it's there. And it could be it's God testing your faith. So think about the times in your life, not just in callings, but in the other times of your life when God is testing your faith. Okay, I think tithing and fast offerings and things is another good one. That's another good one that we can use because does God really need our money? No, he knows where all the gold and silver is in the world. He can create gold and silver out of thin air. He can create money out of thin air. He can do whatever he needs to do because he's God and he's all powerful. But he needs to test us to see if we will be faithful to him. Word of wisdom is another good example of that. Keeping your temple covenants, being worthy to enter the temple is a test of our faith. Wearing the temple garment is a test of our faith. Like they say in the temple questions, when you go through temple recommend stuff, they read that little paragraph of information about the temple garment. It's important to realize that it is as they say in there, it is an outward commitment It's an outward, excuse me, it is an outward manifestation of an inward commitment. And it's not worded exactly that way, but that's basically the gist of it. It's a test. How faithful are we going to be to God? So think about your life and where is your faith being pushed? Where are you having to get out there and do things that above and beyond what you think is right or what you think is comfortable for you to do? Maybe fulfilling a calling is an uncomfortable thing for you. Maybe wearing the garments appropriately or all day long is an uncomfortable thing for you to be doing. It's a test. Are you willing to do what God has asked you to do or not? So just understand that God is always testing us, just like the Israelites are. Thankfully, not in something quite this big, but sometimes we do have big challenges because, again, can you rely on God? Are you willing to put your faith in God? That's what it comes down to. So, hey, thanks for watching the video. We really appreciate it. Love to hear in the comments how God has been testing your faith. I know He's tested my faith all the time through callings and through sicknesses or challenges to life or other things like that. So, what are some of the ways that He's been testing you, and how have you been able to have blessings from overcoming those challenges and putting your faith in God? I'd love to hear some of those stories in the comments. And we look forward to seeing you in the next chapter as well. Thanks for watching.